Andrew Little.
Yeah.
Good morning to you, sir.
Nice to see you.
What are the very key issues facing New Zealanders in the country today?
I think first and foremost it's the issues about the things that give people the opportunity to get ahead. Right now we have a major issue with housing, low home ownership, and a lot of investors and speculators in the housing market. That's pushing up rents. It's actually pushing a lot of people out of homes at all, and so we now have a growing homelessness problem. We have issues in our education system, so funding for our education system has been frozen. We are seeing that in terms of our educational performance against international measures, we're falling. We have issues with a health system not keeping up with demands put up by an ageing population. So a number of issues, and then on the more kind of economic front, we still haven't recovered from the decline in dairy prices and the impact that's had on national income. So some pretty big challenges ahead of us.
Certainly. So from your perspective, government performance in these areas is failing because of what? What are they doing wrong?
They're not funding those public services properly. They're not keeping pace with the rising cost of providing those services, nor the growing population and the changing nature of the population. Their priorities are in other areas. There are some people in New Zealand who are doing extraordinarily well. Unfortunately, it's a small number. There's a whole heap of others. We still get just under 50% of the workforce can't even get a pay rise at the moment. And a lot of businesses are finding the conditions very, very tight at the moment. So it goes back to the priorities for the economy where we invest. I think there's more the government could do to invest in infrastructure like roads and stuff in areas outside of Auckland and Christchurch, and I think that's where we need to be looking for some gains.
Now, the housing crisis, it's incredible to see people sleeping in cars and on the streets. This phenomenon is new in the land of plenty.
We haven't had that in New Zealand before, at least not to the way it is now, where it is patently sort of visible to everybody. And the idea that growing number of people living in garages. I went to one area in South Auckland a few weeks ago, and the church leaders were telling me, there are some streets where every second garage will have a family living in it because that's the only accommodation they can find and afford. So there is something gone seriously wrong with housing in New Zealand. Lack of building them, the fact that our government housing provider, Housing New Zealand, is selling off houses when we've got families in need. And I think, again, it comes back to priorities. And this government, our present government, has just got its priorities wrong.
How much do you think a personal choices by people and individuals could a contributing factor in the housing crisis? We have a news that's been highlighted of a mother with 9 children to different fathers who can't get a house because of the pea infestation in the homes that she is at. So how much of that personal choices?
Yeah, the issue of pea contamination of houses is a difficult one. It tends to not be the tenants who are trying to get into houses, it's people who have been there. And we have a major problem with that. In terms of other personal choices, those would be the rare cases. Pretty much all the cases I've seen actually are families where 1 or 2 working parents, they just cannot afford $600 a week rent for a 2 or 3 bedroom house. It's just out of their reach with the incomes that they're generating. And so they go and stay with friends for a while, or they stay with family, but they can't stay there forever, so they're moving around more and more. And the effect of that is, of course, that if they've got school-aged children, they tend to be moving from one school to the next. Nothing stable, nothing secure, and it's having those implications. So I think that there'd be rare cases where you could say some people have made the wrong choices, and in a lot of cases it's just that incomes haven't kept up with the rapidly rising cost of rents.
This is despite the government saying the average income now is $57,000.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at that figure. That is an average, and you got, as I say, some people who are doing very well at the top, and we saw a survey of chief executives recently. Their average pay increase last year was something like 14%. You talk to the average worker, they are struggling to get 1.5% or 2%.
Right.
And then you get, I think the statistics New Zealand figure was 46% of workers in the workforce last year got no pay increase at all. So sure, some people are doing very well. The averages don't tell the whole story, and they tell a very small story.
Right. Now, again, just staying with the housing crisis, the minister tells us that there are 400 state houses that cannot be let out because of peat contamination. Where's that figure come from? Is that a realistic figure?
We know that there are some state houses that are either contaminated or damaged or whatever, but we've got 40,000 people who are in need of a house, of a home. You've got a government that's selling state houses. They're selling roughly 3,000 this year alone. So they may come up with those figures. In the end, the problem is that we have a whole bunch of people who desperately need a house over their heads. There are houses around. We've just got to, get people into those houses.
Right. Now, 18 months out from the election, how are you feeling at this point?
Oh, good. Actually, we've had the last few months, 2 or 3 months. We've made a few changes internally in the Labor Party about how we operate. We're focused on priority issues, which are about housing, health, education, wages and jobs, and about police. And we are totally disciplined about that. I think it's starting to show through now. Our questioning of ministers, calling them to account, actually getting stories from New Zealanders who are being affected in those particular areas. So very good. We've done our memorandum of understanding with the Green Party.
Yes.
I think because the reality is we were working well with them anyway.
Yes.
And
so it's nothing new.
Nothing new, but we want to send a clear signal to the electorate that, look, here are two parties presently in opposition. We can work together, we are working together, and we are committed to changing the government to the next election. And we've had amazing feedback from that, and so we're feeling pretty confident at the moment. We know we've got a heap of work to do, but 18 months out, our confidence is pretty high.
Right. Can I ask you questions? There's some people saying out there that the MOU with the Greens and this move with the Greens is to secure your own position because there might have been some threats from within your caucus.
No. We've been working on our relationship with the Greens for some time. We've got a good working relationship, and we got to the point where we said, well, we actually need to be clear with the public that we have this relationship. It's good, it's working, it is about cooperating. We are still two separate parties. We want to maximise our vote, they will want to maximise their vote. And this was fully discussed and debated within our caucus, and caucus agreed with it, and that's why we've done it. So I think that we were getting a lot of feedback from people who were saying, yeah, listen, we'd like to support you, but until we can see that there's a real viable alternative to the government, why would we do that? And actually the feedback since has been, right, now I can see where the alternative is. It looks credible, it looks viable, I'm going to get in behind it.
Because that's a song sheet, isn't it, between you and the Greens, that there needs to be a change to government.
Absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
so how are you going to do that? 47% at the moment for the government. Mr Keys is 36% preferred Prime Minister. And we have Winston Peters, who's rating above yourself in terms of preferred Prime Ministership. Now you have the Greens coming in on the far right. Are you going to lose middle ground as well?
No, I think no, because I think a lot of people, they want an alternative. I think what we're seeing is that the shine has very much gone off the government. People see that they're not dealing with the issues. They're increasingly out of touch. They seem to be interested in only those at the very top, and they want something. They want political parties to talk about the issues that affect working families. So that's what we're doing. I think the Greens and us have a very clear message. We are about changing the government. We represent change. For Winston and New Zealand First, the challenge for them is they've got to tell the public, are they about changing the government or being part of it? And I think that's what next year's election is going to be about in part.
Okay. Just one more thing on this issue here. So we have a government staying at 47, and the economy is performing reasonably, growing, and we have inflation at 0.04 or 0.4%, and OCR at 2.5, and all these are good signs for the country. The government say that they've created 180,000 jobs in the last few years and 12,000 houses. You are proposing to do the same in terms of your policy, that when you come into government, that you will build thousands. I don't have a figure in the policy that I've seen, but thousands. Do you have a figure in terms of housing there?
Our target is 100,000 houses over 10 years.
Okay.
Big project. I think if you have a look, I think the whole thing about economic growth, so it's roughly between 2 and 3%.
Right.
But the reality is that not everybody is sharing in there. And
right.
You get people who go and get a pay increase. We've got 40,000 more people out of work now compared to when the government came into office in 2008. We have now 40,000 homeless people. We've never had figures like that before. So they may point to some figures and say, look, aren't we doing well? But the reality is, for a lot of people, they're not seeing it, and their experience right now is a pretty miserable one. And we're getting parents of adult children saying to us, our kids, they work hard, they save hard, they can't afford to buy their own home. And this is not, what the way New Zealand is or should be. And I think a lot of people are saying, actually, there's something wrong here. It's not adding up. We hear about all the good figures and the growth figures, but there's a whole heap of people missing out, and something needs to change.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about your vision for the Kiwi Dream. The Kiwi Dream is prominent on your website, and so what is the Kiwi Dream?
It is that you do, if you work hard, you do the right things, that you can get ahead, that you can get your own home. One of the big challenges we know is the way work is changing and technology is changing work. We can't stop that, but what we can make sure is that people are treated fairly and that people get opportunity to earn an income. And it might be through a job, it might be through their own little business, it might be through sort of contracting, but we want to make sure we have a system that makes sure that people can earn, do well and get ahead. We want a public health system that is there for people when they need it. So regardless of your age, you get to a hospital, it's going to fix you up. That if you're elderly, that you're going to get the care that you need, whether it's in your home or in a hospital or in a retirement home, if that's where you have to be. But making sure that those systems are there, because those are the things that ensure that we have strong communities, but also that people get to have opportunity with a bit of stability and security in their life. They can take advantage of opportunities and do well, and ultimately that's good for the nation as a whole. So we've got to get all those things lined up. Those are the things that are getting out of kilter at the moment.
Now, I'm going to ask you your simple solution to some of these issues that we've been talking about as to end up the interview, but one of which, of course, is the refugee crisis. Now, you're proposing to double that in the next 3 years. From 750 at the moment to 1,500.
That's right.
How can we do that in the light of the current crisis in terms of the housing crisis that we have?
Well, we can. We have, if you look at our immigration and title, we have net incoming migration of roughly 65,000. We've increased the number of work permits that we issue in a single year by 5,000, and at a time when our unemployment is growing and we have these problems. So I think we can manage our total immigration to do more for refugee families, most of whom tend to settle outside Auckland, which is where the big problems are. We have a good track record on refugee settlement, and the reason why we're saying 1,500 is that the experts tell us that after more than 1,500, we will be struggling to do the quality of resettlement that we do. But I think by managing both our conventional immigration and our refugee numbers, we can do right in terms of housing, jobs and everything else, but also meet our moral obligation as a global citizen to take more refugees and alleviate the crises in other parts of the world.
Okay, thank you. All right, some simple answers to the issues. How are you going to solve the health crisis?
It will need more funding, and that's about...
Where's that coming from?
So that reprioritise what the government is spending on at the moment. And we can do that. We've had state-of-the-art health before, funded it properly. It will take us a while to do that. It's not something we can do in the first year, probably even the first 3 years. But over the course of 5 or 6 years, we can reprioritise what we're spending and make sure that the health system gets the funding that it needs.
Education.
Again, this is the building block of life. We've got to get it right in education. And so, whereas there's tens of millions of dollars going into charter schools with very little accountability, the public schools funding has been frozen. Take that money out of the charter schools, put it in the public system, support the teachers, give them more time with the children so they can ensure their success. We'll have a better education system.
Now, that includes you're working for Futures free 3 years of tertiary education after school.
Yeah, because we know that in future budgets the government has set aside $1.5 billion for funding new measures. The first year it's going to cost roughly $260 million. The second year it'll be more than that, $700 million, and it'll go up. But we, again, with the money that's already set aside for future years, plus with reorienting spending that's currently taking place, we can afford 3 free years post-school tertiary educational training.
Job creation.
Yeah, that's about where the government invests. So a lot of infrastructure spending going in Auckland at the moment, and for Christchurch, for obvious reasons. We think that more infrastructure investment in the regions I come from Taranaki. Roads there have been underspent on for some time. Likewise in Hawke's Bay, likewise in many parts of the South Island. You invest there. Also, a regional development fund. So you put some money up, you go to the regions and you say, you identify a reasonably significant project that you know is going to make a difference, that will attract business and attract private investment, and then we will assist you to fund that. So those are the sorts of things that where the government can do smart investment, attract private investment to, and generate the conditions for job growth.
External debt, which
Yeah,
has
well-
come down a little bit.
Yeah, so the government talks about spending $3 billion on tax cuts. Our policy is we wouldn't cut taxes, not at this point, that there are other priorities, and actually reducing debt is one of them, and we've just got to pay down that debt. Because if interest rates rise, as they inevitably will, then that has the potential to create real problems. So we will make that a priority.
Now the hot potato, housing crisis.
Yeah, there's no answer other than building more houses. And you know, as the first Labor government did 80 years ago, can finance the building of new houses, sell them to owners on an affordable basis, and then refinance or use the revenue collected there to finance the next group of houses that you build. So the government can lead that up without having to cost the taxpayer in the long run anything at all. But it is about the government using its power of the size that it's got to buy materials, do the planning with local councils, get the project underway to actually build more houses, and know that that'll be funded through sales of those houses over the long run.
Mr. Little, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you.